There's something to be said about independence, being able to wake up in your own bed and live in your own home. Living on your own means everything, even if it requires getting a little help. Each month, close to 450,000 people statewide are able to get that help and retain their independence, thanks to in-home supportive service providers like you. Hi, and welcome to the In-Home Supportive Services, or IHSS, Provider Orientation. You are about to become a part of a very special group of people. Currently, there are close to 500,000 individuals in California who have already enrolled as IHSS providers to help people to continue to live safely in their own homes. Most people, including those who are elderly or disabled, prefer to live in their own home. A person's home is where they feel most comfortable and where they can remain a part of their community and make decisions which affect their quality of life. The benefit that living in one's own home brings is a sense of independence, comfort, and peace that comes from familiar surroundings. You, the IHSS care provider, are critical in making it possible for IHSS consumers to remain safely in their own homes, where they can enjoy their personal freedom and independence, continue being part of their community, and avoid the unsettling and undesired feelings that out-of-home care can bring. Without IHSS care providers like you, this would not be possible. During this presentation, I'll be giving you some basic information about the IHSS program, and we'll also try to give you a better understanding of the program's expectations. Now, we'll be referring to you, the person providing the services, as the provider or employee, and the person receiving the help is either the consumer, recipient, or more frequently the employer. Now, this individual is considered the employer as he or she has the authority and the responsibility to hire the care provider, also supervise their work, define how the tasks will be completed, and can also terminate the provider if he or she chooses to. So let's start things off by talking a little about the IHSS program and what you'll be doing. The In-Home Supportive Services program provides services to income-eligible people over the age of 65 and the blind and/or disabled. The goal of the IHSS program is to allow people to live safely in their own homes and avoid the need for out-of-home care. IHSS allows the recipient to hire someone to help out with services such as housework, laundry, meal preparation, and personal care. Personal care may include bathing and dressing services. In addition, paramedical services such as wound care are also available as part of the IHSS program. In order to qualify for IHSS, services almost always need to be provided in the recipient's own home. This could be in a house, apartment, hotel, or the home of a relative. The recipient can choose to live in any type of home they desire, as long as it is not an acute care hospital, skilled nursing, intermediate care, community care, or board and care facility. There are times when some services can be provided outside the home, such as when you accompany the recipient to the doctor. There may be times when services may also be provided in the workplace, or when the recipient travels on vacation and you accompany them. You should always make sure that your employer or recipient has informed their social worker in advance to verify if your circumstances will qualify for IHSS payment. IHSS is a Medi-Cal program and is funded by federal, state, and county dollars. Therefore, recipients must meet all Medi-Cal income eligibility requirements to receive IHSS services. So that's a little bit about the program. Now let's talk about you and the requirements for IHSS providers. One of the first things you have to do is attend a provider orientation to get specific information about IHSS rules and regulations and IHSS program integrity. The good news is that watching this DVD is part of your orientation, so you're already well on your way. Once we're done with this orientation session, you'll be asked to sign the Provider Enrollment Agreement form. By signing this form, you agree that you will provide the authorized services. You understand the program's expectations as described in today's orientation. You will cooperate with the state and county staff to provide necessary information. You are aware of measures that the state and county may take to enforce program integrity. You understand that if you do not follow the rules and requirements to be a provider, you may be fired from providing services through the IHSS program. You are acknowledging if you have certain prior criminal convictions. And the information you're giving is correct under penalty of lying under oath. As part of the enrollment process, you'll also need to set up a time to get fingerprinted so a criminal background check can be done. Even if you have previously had your fingerprints taken for something other than IHSS, such as school or a prior job, you'll still need to do it again to become an IHSS provider. Also, if you stop working for IHSS for more than a year, you will need to have your fingerprints redone. If you provide services for multiple recipients either in the same county or in different counties, you'll only need to be fingerprinted once. State law mandates that you are responsible for paying all the costs related to the fingerprinting and your background check. Your county IHSS office or IHSS public authority can give you a list of nearby locations where you can be fingerprinted. If the criminal background check finds that you have been convicted of certain crimes, you may be ineligible to become an IHSS provider or employee. There are two categories of crimes that will make you ineligible. They are referred to as Tier 1 and Tier 2 crimes. If in the last 10 years you've been convicted of or incarcerated following the conviction of certain crimes, you are not eligible to be enrolled as an IHSS provider employee or to receive payment from the IHSS program, even if your crime was removed from your record. On the other hand, for some crimes, you may be able to be a provider if you receive a waiver or general exception. Now, this is a lot of information to absorb. You can find all the requirements and the definitions of Tier 1 and Tier 2 crimes explained in detail in the handouts included in your packet and the implication of each on your employment status. There are two more important requirements that you should know and understand because as an IHSS provider employee, these laws apply directly to you. They are confidentiality and mandated reporter. First, confidentiality. You probably know that when you go to a doctor, your confidentiality is protected. This means that your doctors are required to keep all of your medical information private. These same rules apply to all healthcare providers and hospitals, and they also apply to you as an IHSS provider. You cannot give any information about the services your consumer receives, even including that they receive help from IHSS. You also cannot discuss any information about your consumer with any unauthorized individuals or organizations without the written permission of the consumer or the person who is legally responsible for that individual. Anyone sharing information inappropriately about someone they care for is guilty of a misdemeanor. Now let's talk about what it means to be a mandated reporter. As an IHSS provider, you are a mandated reporter. This means that by law, you must report any suspected abuse immediately to the County Adult Protective Services or Children's Protective Services. There are several types of abuse that must be reported, including physical abuse, mental suffering, abandonment, isolation, financial exploitation, neglect, self-neglect, abduction, and sexual abuse. The information about who reported the abuse will be kept confidential, and you can refer to the mandated reporter handout for more details and information about what you should do if you suspect someone you're caring for is the victim of abuse. As you know, IHSS is a huge program in California made up of nearly 1 million consumers and providers. To make a program this large run as smoothly as possible, many agencies need to be involved. While it's great to have support on multiple levels, this can sometimes add to confusion as to who you should contact when different situations come up. Let's take a quick moment to break down how everything is structured and who handles what part of the process. The federal and state governments provide oversight and direction to the counties. These counties are responsible for managing the IHSS program on a local level. A county social worker will conduct an assessment. This assessment process includes identifying which services the recipients require to remain safely in their own homes, how much help is needed, how much time it takes to provide the services, and how often they must be done. The social worker will take into account the different levels of need on good and bad days. The counties also enroll providers in the IHSS program, answer questions from recipients about IHSS, and participate in fraud detection activities. The Department of Health Care Service auditors and County District Attorney's Office and welfare investigators all investigate potential fraud when cases are referred to them and prosecute those accused of fraud. There are 56 IHSS public authority agencies throughout California. If there is a public authority available in your county, these agencies are responsible for maintaining the county's provider registry, making provider referrals to recipients, and offering access to provider training. Public authorities are also responsible for performing collective bargaining, as well as providing wage and health benefit information to providers. Now we're going to talk about what services IHSS does and doesn't cover. You should have a handout which says services covered by IHSS. In it, you'll find a complete list of the services and tasks that you may be authorized to provide for your recipient employer. So let's say you're providing assistance to someone who is unable to do house cleaning or personal care. IHSS can pay for you to assist with meal preparation and cleanup, laundry, shopping, bathing and oral hygiene, feeding and dressing. Also, each service has a list of specific tasks that you should be familiar with. All the approved services and tasks can be found in your handout. There are a lot of services available within the IHSS program. However, you will not have to provide all of these services for the person you're caring for. Only the IHSS services that are authorized for that individual. The county is required to authorize only the services the recipient needs to remain safely at home. Each recipient will receive a list showing what services you can be paid for providing and how much time is authorized to do them each month. This list is called a Notice of Action. Before providing services to an IHSS recipient, you should ask the recipient to tell you which IHSS tasks have been authorized, the number of hours, and the schedule you are being hired to work. Starting in 2012, all providers will receive a notice that contains a list of approved services for their recipient. Remember, IHSS will only pay you for a service or task that has been authorized. However, the recipient you work for may choose to pay you to provide services that the IHSS program does not pay for. This agreement would be between you and your recipient. If your recipient asks you to do something that is not on the list of services or tasks, or asks you to do something that has not been authorized for them, you will not be paid for doing what they ask. In these situations, it's generally best to politely remind them about the Notice of Action list and services that are authorized. If you do choose to do something that is not on the Notice of Action, you cannot put the time it takes on your timesheet. Some of the things IHSS will not pay for include moving furniture, paying bills, reading mail to your recipient, caring for pets, including service animals, gardening, sitting with them to visit or watch TV, taking the recipient on social outings, reimbursement for gas or transportation expense, time waiting for the recipient in the doctor's office, and repair services. You may also find there will be times when previously approved services are not covered. For example, you'll not be paid for providing any services if your recipient is in a licensed care facility. Generally speaking, the same also applies to cleaning your recipient's home if they go into a licensed institution. However, there are a few exceptions to this rule. If you find yourself in this situation, be sure to ask your employer recipient to verify with their county worker first before you do anything. If your employer is hospitalized or passes away, you cannot claim hours and/or be paid during their hospitalization or after their death, and should notify the county social worker immediately. If you intentionally claim for time worked on your timesheet for services in either of these situations, you will have to repay any money that you received and/or may face criminal penalties. In addition to the authorized services and tasks for your recipient, there is also a set amount of hours approved for each service per month. You will not be paid for any time above those monthly hours that have been authorized. If it consistently takes more or less time to complete the authorized tasks, you should have your employer report these changes to their county social worker. The county worker is required to reassess the recipient whenever there is a change in circumstances affecting their need for services. If your employer refuses services you have been authorized to do, you need to make sure your timesheets do not include hours for these services. If they always refuse to have you do specific services, you need to make sure that they let their IHSS county worker know so they can update their records. You must also keep in mind the recipient may have multiple providers and may choose which providers assist them with certain tasks. As you can tell, it's important that your timesheet only reflects the time you have spent doing authorized services and tasks. It's never okay to put time on your timesheet for hours not worked. Deliberately filling out your timesheet with incorrect information is a serious issue and can carry some serious consequences, including being considered as criminal fraud. As we said earlier, IHSS is a Medi-Cal program funded by federal, state, and county dollars. This means that IHSS fraud is Medi-Cal fraud. The California Department of Healthcare Services is responsible for investigating Medi-Cal fraud. Reducing and eliminating fraud helps save IHSS program resources. If you suspect anyone may be committing IHSS or other Medi-Cal fraud, you must report this to Medi-Cal by calling the toll-free number, sending an email, filling out an online form, or contacting the county. You do not have to have proof of fraud. There are investigators who will determine whether Medi-Cal fraud has been committed. In addition to public reporting, fraud may be detected in several ways, including through computer matches with other federal and state agencies, during the assessment process, while the county and/or state staff conduct quality assurance and fraud detection activities, and during authorized unannounced program integrity visits to the homes of recipients by state and/or county staff. The following video shows some real examples of how actual IHSS recipients and providers tried to take inappropriate advantage of the IHSS program. The result? Criminal fraud and some pretty significant penalties. While the stories are true, actors have been used to portray both the recipients and the providers.
In-home supportive services provide help for those in need. It's important to preserve the program resources and avoid fraud. We know these examples represent the minority, but it is important for you to understand what is considered fraud. Understanding the rules can help you avoid a situation that can have significant consequences. Let's look at a few examples. This is Shirley Sayer. She thought she could be in two places at one time. She was an IHSS provider for her son in California and moved from California to Colorado and still claimed IHSS benefits. That is illegal. Shirley requested that her checks be mailed to a post office box in Riverdale, California, and then forwarded to her address in Colorado. She submitted timesheets claiming she provided IHSS services for her son in California for 5 months. Shirley is now serving 180 days in jail with 3 years probation. Here are the Shibosians. Charlie was the provider for his father Earl, who said he had functional limitations, but was caught on tape showing this was not true. Because Earl was not disabled, the timesheets submitted by Charlie were fraudulent. Viola was the IHSS provider for her mother Gracie, who was also caught on tape showing that she overstated her condition. As a result of mom and dad overstating their needs, their children received over $70,000 in false benefits. They are all serving time now. Malay was the provider caring for her sick father Vaughn, who was hospitalized and died in March of 2005. Malay submitted timesheets for the care of her father while he was in the hospital and for 2 months after his death. Malay is serving 120 days in jail with 1 year probation for timesheet fraud. For 3 years and 8 months, David was a provider and Joe was a recipient. David didn't actually perform any services for Joe because Joe didn't actually have anything wrong with him. When the checks came in, they split the money. Joe and David are serving 90 days in jail with 3 years probation for IHSS fraud. The in-home supportive services system can be abused in many ways, and the consequences for intentionally abusing the system are devastating to you and your family. If you have a question or are unsure of IHSS policies and procedures, ask for help. If you assume and you are incorrect, you could be liable for your mistake. The District Attorney's Office takes all fraud cases seriously.
The information shown here is also included in your packet. Remember, by being aware of both the IHSS program rules and your own responsibilities as an IHSS provider, you can help protect the integrity of the IHSS program. In order to get paid for all your hard work, you're going to need to know how to properly fill out your timesheet, because errors in how you fill it out could mean a delay in being paid. So let's get started. Here are the 10 basic things to remember when filling out your timesheet. 1. There are 2 pay periods in a month, the 1st through the 15th and the 16th through the last day of the month. When you begin working as a provider, timesheets will be provided to use until your first paycheck arrives. After that, your timesheet will be attached to the bottom of your paycheck. When you get your paycheck, tear the timesheet from your pay stub along the perforated line. Be careful, since it's at the bottom of your pay stub, there's a chance you could tear off important information. If this happens, it will delay your payment, as you will need to request, complete, and submit a new timesheet. 2. It's important that your timesheet is accurate. It is extremely important that you record your hours worked each day so that when you get your timesheet, you can fill it out accurately. Notice that your timesheet has a box showing the hours authorized for the recipient. The hours shown on the first timesheet of the month will have the total number of hours approved for your recipient for the entire month, so don't work all these hours in the first half of the month. If there is more than one provider caring for an individual, this will be the number of hours for all of the providers to share. If this is the case, make sure you know your share of the hours allotted for the month, and be careful not to exceed that amount. The hours shown on the timesheet for the second half of the month are the number of hours left for the month. Remember, you will not be paid for more than the number of hours listed here, even if you work more and enter more in your timesheet. If you provide care for more than one recipient, you'll need to fill out and submit a separate timesheet for each of the recipients you work for. 3. If you move, you must notify your local IHSS office or public authority to request an address change form. You need to do this within 10 days of moving. 4. As we mentioned earlier, you may only enter time spent doing authorized services. You won't be paid for doing things that aren't approved. 5. You can only enter the time you yourself worked. You cannot claim work done by someone else. 6. Only use black or blue ink when filling out your timesheet. Do not use pencil or use correction tape or fluid to fix an entry. If you make a mistake, cross out what's wrong, enter the correct information, and initial the change. Make sure that you have your consumer initial it as well. 7. If you didn't work on a certain day, enter a 0 on that day. 8. When the pay period is complete, add up and enter the total hours you worked for the pay period. Make sure you write neatly. If it's too hard to read, your paycheck may be delayed. 9. Both you and your recipient must sign and date the timesheet. Your paycheck will be delayed if either signature is missing. These signatures and the dates must be after the pay period for which the work was done, and the timesheet cannot be submitted before the last day you've worked in that pay period. 10. Once your timesheet is complete, make a copy of it and mail the original to the address given to you by the county, and you should receive your paycheck within 10 working days. After you have been working as an IHSS provider for 3 months, you will be able to sign up and receive your pay by direct deposit. All of your income will be reported to the IRS. However, because IHSS providers are classified as household employees, federal and state taxes are not automatically withheld from your pay. If you want taxes withheld from your pay, you must complete and submit a W-4 form. All providers are covered by workers' compensation insurance. You may elect to have state disability insurance deducted from your pay by filling out an SOC 409 IHSS CMIPS, Elective State Disability Insurance, SDI form, and submitting it to your county IHSS office. However, if you are a spouse and/or a parent provider, you are not eligible for unemployment compensation and Social Security withholdings. For any additional information on taxes and withholdings, you should contact your local California Franchise Tax Board or Internal Revenue Service office. There are some Medi-Cal recipients who must pay or agree to pay a monthly dollar amount toward their medical expenses before they qualify for Medi-Cal benefits. Examples of medical expenses include prescriptions, medical supplies, doctor visits, and IHSS. This dollar amount is called a share of cost. Generally, a recipient's share of cost is determined by the County Welfare Department's Medi-Cal eligibility worker and is based on the amount of income a recipient receives in excess of the maintenance need levels. A share of cost is the amount of money an IHSS recipient must pay to their IHSS provider every month to share the cost. Medi-Cal will assess whether a recipient has a share of cost as well as the specific amount. If a share of cost is deducted from your paycheck, both you and your recipient employer will receive an explanation of benefits letter telling you the amount that should be paid to you by your recipient employer. For example, if your employer has a monthly share cost of $100 and they spent $100 at the pharmacy that month, then they have satisfied their Medi-Cal share of cost. However, if the employer recipient did not spend the $100 that month, they are responsible for paying the first $100 of their Medi-Cal benefit directly to you, their provider. If you have any questions regarding share of cost, you should contact your county representative. Now let's look at some common mistakes we find on timesheets that are turned in. Here are two actors portraying Penny and Jenna. They're sisters who are IHSS providers taking care of their mother.
What? I've totally been ripped off.
What do you mean?
Last week I put in 45 hours worth of work and I only got paid for 40.
Remember when we talked about your timesheet having a box showing the hours authorized for the consumer? Well, Penny was only authorized to do 40 hours of work for her mom. Even though she wrote down 45, she's only going to get paid for the 40 that were authorized. Okay, let's look at another situation with Penny and Jenna and see what happens when you try to take shortcuts.
Oh, I forgot to write all my hours down for the last pay period.
How many hours were you authorized for?
I think 63, but I can't remember.
Well, why don't you just divide 63 by 14 days and then write that in? Here, put in 4 hours and 30 minutes for each day.
Okay.
Okay, stop. We talked about it earlier. You can only write down your actual hours worked. Make sure you know how many hours you are authorized to work and keep track of and report the actual hours you work each day. Now let's see what Jenna and Penny are up to.
Hello?
Penny, I need you to do me a big favor. I totally forgot to turn in my timesheet. Can you mail it in for me? It's on the counter.
Yeah. Okay, I found it. But you haven't signed it.
That's fine. Mom signed her part. Just send it in without my signature. If at least Mom signed it, they still have to pay me.
No, that's not true. Timesheets received with only one signature will not be accepted. Be sure that both you and your recipient sign the timesheet before you turn it in. Remember, by signing your timesheet, you are verifying under penalty of perjury that all information is factual and accurate. Now let's look at one more situation.
Are you serious?
What's wrong?
They sent my timesheet back because they said they couldn't read my writing, and they said my paycheck's going to be delayed.
Oh, that stinks. Wait, is that a 4 or a 9?
I don't know.
If you can't read your own writing, chances are no one else can either. Make sure you take the time to write legibly, or that paycheck's going to be delayed. If you have any questions about your timesheets that we didn't cover here, please ask your county representative. Well, we're just about done, but there's one last thing you'll need to do before you leave here today, and that's to sign the Provider Enrollment Agreement form that's included in your packet. We hope this presentation has given you a better understanding of the IHSS program and has provided helpful information on how to follow the requirements. If you have any questions, your county social services staff or public authority representative can help you. On behalf of the California Department of Social Services, we'd like to thank you for your willingness to serve as an IHSS provider. Your job is definitely not an easy one. But thanks to you, it can help keep elderly, blind, and disabled adults and children safely in their own homes. We thank you for your assistance and dedication to this valuable program.